So, one of the things with stories is like when I think of them, the one that really comes to mind to me is, as much as I hate the movie, is Episode 8 of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
That movie simply exists to deny resolution. Every single plot beat in that movie is to take the previous movie and to say, no, this is not how it's going to go.
And so it's not only an anti-Star Wars, but it's an anti-movie.
An anti-story, yeah.
An anti-story, yeah.
Every single plot beat.
It is perverse, I'll say that. Its level of perversity is, and I'm not talking in the sexual deviancy sense, but rather just in its perverse treatment of a beloved franchise and its characters.
And it really feels like the point of the story is not to progress any sort of plot, but to reset it.
Yeah.
And every single story beat in there building up to the end is, no, this is not how this is going to happen. No, this is not how this is going to happen. No, this is not how this is going to happen. And finally, when you
it makes you wonder if they're intentionally taking a wrecking ball to it.
Yeah.
One could argue, well, there's a profit motive, so they were under the erroneous assumption that the Force is female, and you can just abandon all your fan base and gain a new one. There's that argument, but then the more I look into it, the more it's just like it seems like they're actually trying to destroy any kind of shared mythos or just love like franchises. It seems like it's almost intentional. Like, we'll buy it up and get shadow government dollars to take a wrecking ball to it. It's really strange.
And you can trace the idea of it being an anti-story through the politics of it. Not the, Republican, Democrat politics.
Right.
But
like small p or something.
Exactly. And what you see is Disney signs J.J. Abrams to a deal. He's going to direct the first movie and work on the script with, I can't remember the scriptwriter's name. And then J.J. is going to hand it off to young, upcoming, rising directors and help them the way that he has since Super 8. That's how the first movie went. And the scriptwriter and him actually scripted out all three movies.
Yeah, you're talking about. I know who you're talking about.
Kathleen Kennedy comes in and brings Rian Johnson in.
Was it Colin Trevorrow?
Colin Trevorrow was supposed to be the third director.
Yeah, that's right.
And he directed Jurassic World. But Kathleen Kennedy brings Rian Johnson in for the second movie and lets him literally take a wrecking ball to the script. She's like, oh, you want to write a new script for the second movie? And he's like, yeah, I do. And comes in and blows up this 3-script story, and you have the fragments of it in the first movie, and the second movie literally is a wrecking ball to establish Rian Johnson's script. Well, they see how badly that bombs, bring J.J. Abrams back in,
to try to fix it.
He has to take a wrecking ball to the script that Rian Johnson built. So the whole trilogy really is an anti-story. It is, how many times can we reset? And
I will say this though, so I'm not a fan of The Last Jedi, but my girls say, why do you always watch this one, Dad? And I think part of me, there is a morbid curiosity. There's for me, it was just such a thing to have your childhood just smashed into the, so deprecated on, that it's almost a thing of it's almost like a mastery in a different vein, and it's something that I return to and watch and just go, oh, if anything, for some Schadenfreude, man, this is the example, this will be the example of mismanagement of a franchise, the biggest one. It's just, I still remember walking out of that theater, my dad and I remember there were moments we were watching it and I'd look over at him and he just had this face on of this grimacing through the movie. And the thing is, when it ended, there used to be a time you saw a Star Wars movie, the audience would get up and clap because it's Star Wars. Even Rogue One, they were doing that. You know? And Rogue One was fine, But when we stood up, it was the walk of shame out of that theater, that the sense of that. And then I remember But the thing is, I wasn't the first one in the office to have seen it. It was so the whole gang. They're consumers, so they're going to see things on the first day, especially Star Wars. They all go and see it, and the next day, I walk up to them on the smoke deck, and I'm like, "So how was it?" And I was all excited. How was it? It's a Star Wars, and I didn't know yet because it was the day before. But their response told me everything because these are like Star Wars nerds, and they were like, "It was good. Yeah, it was like." They were very mum about they didn't want it because they knew there was the pink-haired HR gal in it, and all their alphabet, like all their different their people, right? They're darling minorities. So to say something against that movie. And I think there was also processing, going on. I think these folks just hadn't been able to process what they just saw.
And I think it really leans into that because I watched it with a good friend of mine at college.
Yeah.
Her and I went and just we were bored and we're like, hey, Star Wars is out. Let's go watch Star Wars.
Yeah.
We got out of there and we were angry.
Yeah. Were you really? Oh, yeah. Fascinating.
I came back home from college.
Yeah.
And I talked to all my buddies. And they were like, it was good, right?
Dude, that must have been before you and I were really chatting a lot.
Yeah.
When was this? 2000 and... I don't know.
Whenever it came out, because I watched it opening weekend.
No, we were talking a lot. Yeah, back in those days. No, we knew of each other.
We knew each other, but we weren't...
I think we were, because now that I think about it, because I was just put I was pretty sure anyways, yeah, I'm pretty sure we did in that time. I wonder, we probably just didn't chat about it much, just given the more prevailing American politics at the time, which was even a bigger shit show,
But that's really the biggest anti-story to me. But yeah. I do think that a storyless story. You can write one.
So are you saying the motives of the artist comes into play? If they're, because one can argue that it's a story, the Last Jedi, at least structurally, it's a bad one, but it is one. But it seems like you're coloring it based on the motives of the author, that they're intentionally trying to subvert an existing, its predecessor story.
There's a duality to it. That is one half of it. The other half is, to me, the story starts here, and ends here.
Yeah,
there is stuff in between, but the resolution is status quo.
You've got to close it out. Yeah, you've got to. So my question still stands: could you write a story, quote unquote, where it's set in some fictional college town on a fictional planet, and it's just these beings that are working in their little, cubbyhole areas. They're, and they're just going about their day, their day, and they go to the cafeteria or whatever. And it's really does. There is no, I guess, loose ends to tie up or anything to to really speak on, other than you're an alien anthropologist observing them in the wild, going about their day.
To me, you can write a storyless story, but you cannot read a storyless story.
Mm-hmm.
I got into an argument in my philosophy class I had to take in college, and I was the only person. My professor asked, "Is there an innate good?" Taking the metaphysical out of it, pretending that God is on his own plane. Is there an innate good in the world? And I argued no. Because if good exists, we will find evil. You cannot have pure good. You cannot eliminate evil in that sense because we are creatures of patterns.
Yeah.
And I use the example that, okay, we have laws. Things have changed over time. Murder is always going to be bad.
Right.
But you move to an HOA, murders aren't happening every day, right?
Right.
So the scale of evil shrinks. And it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks so much that having a plant out of place on your lawn is now evil.
Yeah.
It is now an evil act. And that's where, like, to me, you have this sliding scale where if you establish...
So a sensitivity scale of degree of good and evil? Is that the underpinning of it all?
But then you can apply that to a story.
Yeah.
Because you're going to find micro drama.
Well, you're going to have man versus nature. You're going to so back to the college example. You got somebody who's like fighting over their exam. Okay, they're fighting with themselves really in their own competence. So, but there is always going to be that good versus evil, that oppositional, some sort of oppositional forces have to be applied in order for there to be a story, right?
Correct.
However minute they might be, you know.
Simply by me existing, there is drama in the fact that my atoms are somehow held together.
Yeah, we're all. We
have a negative
lurching forward closer and closer to death by the year. So yeah, okay. So
I think you can write a storyless story, but you cannot read one because the human brain will always find the pattern of perceived drama, perceived tension.
See, I don't even know if it's possible to write a storyless story because I guess it would be, you know, it's like one person will define a story as, you know, like it's got to have some kind of heart, or it's got to have some sort of meaning or message. That's a story. Someone else would argue more of the slice of life thing. But that, you know, they might be looser on the definition rather, but that, you know, a story has to have some sort of a satisfying ending or a climax or a structure, like a structure that you could draw out, map out in 50 different ways. But I'm kind of inclined to believe that, even in its most Mondrian reduced state, Mondrian being the artist, that, you know, his successive series of tree paintings started with, you know, realism, and he wanted to make the most abstract variant of trees. So as the experimentations progress, you see his art gets more and more geometrical. Yeah. And reductionist down to the point of complete abstraction, which is beautiful.
I believe he was a day still artist, like the Dutch movement, but
it's possible.
I think John was. That's a story.
Yeah.
But it's storyless in its nature, right? It does not follow any sort of plot diagram. It does not tell you anything except for John was. What was John?
Uh-huh.
Well, did he exist? Like, are you just saying that he
waiting
existed?
for Godot? Don't we ever? It's been a while, but don't we kind of like not know much about Godot? But he's right. So, yeah. But I believe that's right.
But to me, like that statement, that sentence, two words, you cannot really attain anything from that except for what is explicitly stated. But that is a storyless story.
Yeah.
He has a story. John was. What was John? You're just telling me he existed.
Well, he's got. I mean, there is an indicator there, and he's got a Christian name, so you can maybe deduce where he's from, but that's
where I wrote a story.
Then you got John Frum, the Messiah of the cargo cults of islander nations, who. They recall meeting an American that got off a World War II plane, and he said something like John from somewhere is the theory, but they heard it as his name is John Frum, so he became their proverbial Messiah. But a name like John was, or John Frum, John could be, a Caucasian man, or he can be one of those islanders. And modeled after one John Frum.
I wrote a storyless story.
Yeah.
But it could not exist because you built a story from it as soon as you heard it.
Yeah.
And that's my argument, is that you can write a storyless story. It could have no meaning. You could just put words on a page that follow a grammatical structure.
Oh, so you're saying that... So there's a concept I have, it's called the pseudo-void, which is... the contradictory nature. If you occupy a void, we think about falling into the void. If you occupy the void, well, that space is no longer pure nothingness, but it now has the constituency of you.
Yeah.
So now you occupy this thing, and thus it's not a full void; it's a pseudo-void. So you're suggesting the same thing, that once the written word enters into the mind of the reader, it by default, it is not an absence of story, but rather it's a story in animation.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Actually,
it's like how in mathematics every set contains the null set.
Yeah, it's a paradox. So the very moment that you encounter a story or run through a story, read a story, it now it matters not the intention of the author. Does the projector in your mind project a story, however reduced? Mm-hmm. Those Mondrian tree paintings are still trees.
Yeah.
There's meaning.
Exactly, and that's why I write my stories with an intentionality in the structure.
Yeah.
Because to me, I'm not going to say I understand what we're talking about. Like, I understand that the reader builds the story in their mind.
Yeah.
But that does go into my thought process. When I am writing, I think, okay, what can I introduce now so that the reader is already primed to think about that later? I'm teaching them how to read my story as I write it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to build out the structure and the plot and everything in such a way that it slowly introduces the elements you're going to expand upon.
Yeah.
And that is what lends itself to giving thematic impact, is you build the foundation. So you can have, like, I'm building storied stories as opposed to storyless stories, because I understand that if I just throw words on a page, someone can make a story out of it. But I want to direct that. I want to be the cinematographer for their experience.
Yeah.
The director.
I think it's impossible to write a storyless story. And I think I just didn't cover that. I think I just gleaned that from our chat here, because I guess the question would be, who's defining what a story is? And not to be a moral relativist about it, that's not my intent, but if there's so much as an object in that room, it's now taken form, it's got time, it's got shape, it's got all the makings of a pseudo reality, and it can be tracked, and there is some narrative, however basic. Mm-hmm. There are life forms that are very basic. Archaea is very basic, and yet it's an endless pool of fascination to wade through. The Archaea, who's, it's a life kingdom separate from Animalia, Plantae. It lives in the most inhospitable areas of the world, where no other forms of life can survive, in these vents. Like Yosemite, and these like geysers, they can thrive there, and yet they're a single-celled organism. Yeah. So a story is similar in that vein, I think. It's a data package, and one bit of data tells some form of a story.
And that's where we differ, I think, is my perspective on it is almost Descartesian.
Yeah.
If I am the author and I write words on a page that don't mean anything to me, that is a storyless story.
Yeah.
But if I read a story, I'm immediately going to... If I read a storyless story, if I read some words that are on a page, I'm immediately going to build a story from that.
So let me ask you this. Jackson Pollock, the author... Right. I'm not a fan, but regardless... There's the debate, is it really art? He splatters paint everywhere. Well, he is directing his hand in certain ways. Mm-hmm. There is a conscious effort being had. And I've actually seen, to be fair to Jackson Pollock, I've seen some of his stuff in person. I'm like, there is a process here. There is a process. There is an art here. He's much looser in his conveyance of the art, but it's still art.
Yeah.
And the same with the story, is that somebody who just smatters words on a page, they're still smattering, they're still directing these concepts. There's some, even if there's some subconscious rationale for stringing these words together in the way that they do, that they're configured, I think there's still a story being had. Now, I do wonder this though: are stories built by AI? Are those real stories?
They lose the intent. So I think that yes, they are facsimiles of what a story is.
Yeah.
On the basic, like on a philosophical level, obviously it is a story.
Yeah.
But if we talk about like
it was devoid of soul.
Yeah, like if I say, like I go back to that thing, John was. What was John? John existed. That's the only thing we know from that statement. If an AI wrote that, you don't have the story that you built from, okay, well, you can't take the author's intent. Like, therefore, you can't have a resolution to what it was. You know what I'm saying?
So it's just a clever forgery.
Yeah.
Yet again.
Going back to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's kind of like the debate, what makes intelligence? Well, I've had this debate with people, and often you'll find when you ask what makes for an intelligent or a successful person, they're often going to cite those qualities that they themselves employ or exemplify. Each of us could have a different answer. What is success or what is intelligence? It's, well, I've made a lot of money. I've built a business. It's like, yeah, but are you a one-trick pony? Like there's also, some would argue, the richness of enriching the mind with literature. Okay, but you're also a social, pariah, and you ain't got no woman, right? And then you're right. So you can go down everyone's definition varies, and I suspect too, what the makings of a story is, similar. Yeah, it's a similar sort of thing. Yeah. So this is real cool. Thank you.
Yeah.